the indictment of former FBI Director James Comey, I mean, it's not just another news story. This feels like an earthquake in American politics, doesn't it?
It really does. We've watched this really high-stakes feud play out for years, and now, boom, federal felony charges filed September 2025.
Right. And the core question, I think, for everyone listening, especially our knowledgeable learners here at KaiZen, is this. Is this real accountability, for things he did wrong? Or is it just politics, a political hit job, plain and simple?
Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we need to figure out. It's where, the political talk hits the legal reality. We've gathered a ton of material, DOJ Inspector General reports detailing Comey's actions back in 2016, news coverage from AP, The Guardian on the recent indictment, everything.
And our mission today is to unpack it all, give you that clarity so you can see past the spin, because you really need the history to understand what's happening now.
Exactly.
So we're diving straight in. Ask yourself right now, Comey, villain, victim. Keep that question in mind as we go.
Okay, let's start with the shockwave. September 2025, James Comey indicted. 2 felony counts.
Then these aren't minor charges, right? We're talking serious felony.
Absolutely not minor. These are significant criminal charges. It's not just a reprimand.
So what exactly are the charges? The reports say it's about lying, misleading lawmakers about the Russia investigation.
That's the core of it. It centers on his testimony back in 2020. Specifically, did he lie about authorizing leaks, leaking internal FBI info to the media, particularly around the start of the Russia probe?
Because he always maintained he didn't authorize leaks, didn't he?
He did. He claimed he never told anyone at the FBI to leak. But prosecutors are now saying they have evidence, maybe emails, maybe testimony from others, proving the claim was false. That's the alleged lying to Congress and obstruction piece.
Okay, so right away you see the lines being drawn, the political battlefield is set. You have one side seeing this as long overdue accountability.
That's the offense case. Attorney General Pam Bondi, her statement really set that tone. She said, flat out, no one is above the law.
Framing it as proof, the Justice Department is serious about accountability for abuse of power.
Exactly. For a lot of people, this confirms their view that officials involved in politically charged cases, especially around elections, have to be held to the absolute highest standard when they testify.
And, of course, former President Trump jumped right on that.
Instantly. Went straight to social media, called Comey a dirty cop, a destroyer of lives, celebrated it as justice in America.
Which really feeds that narrative, doesn't it? The idea of the deep state, officials acting above the law, finally getting caught, purging the system.
It plays right into it. But then you have the immediate counterargument, the defense case, that this is pure political targeting. And the circumstances around the indictment itself make that argument powerful.
The ACLU, for example, came out really strong.
They did, called it a grotesque abuse of presidential power. They weren't just criticizing the charge itself. They basically said the administration corrupted the justice system to carry out a vendetta.
A direct challenge to the DOJ's impartiality.
And that brings us to the alleged mechanism of the retribution. This is critical. Sources pointed out that the White House had recently pushed out the previous top prosecutor in that district.
And installed Pam Bondi,
Right.
who used to be Trump's personal lawyer, right before the charges against Comey dropped.
Precisely. That timing, that specific personnel change, well, it adds a lot of fuel to the claims of political interference. You can see why people would be suspicious.
Comey himself hit that point hard on Instagram, denied the charges, said something like, "My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump."
Yeah, framing it as political martyrdom, the price for defying Trump.
So this current fight, it's really the climax of this incredibly bitter feud that started almost the minute Trump won in 2016.
You really have to go back there to understand the intensity now. It didn't just come out of nowhere.
Let's talk about that backstory, because Comey's actions later, the ones that got him labeled a rogue agent, they make more sense, or at least are put in context, by those early interactions.
Right. Remember, Comey briefed Trump before the inauguration about the Steele dossier, the really salacious, unverified stuff. That alone set a weird tone.
And then came the loyalty requests.
Yeah. Comey documented it all. Trump asking for personal loyalty, asking him to drop the investigation into Michael Flynn, his national security advisor.
And Trump kept asking Comey to publicly say that he, Trump, wasn't personally under investigation.
Which leads to this really crucial difference in how Comey operated. He wrote detailed memos about all 9 of his one-on-one talks with Trump.
Which he absolutely did not do with President Obama. She only documented 2 in-person meetings there, never phone calls. That's a huge shift.
A massive, deliberate shift. And here's where you see the beginnings of what you called the Comey doctrine of solo action. His reason. He felt the requests were so unusual, so politically loaded, loyalty pledges, dropping investigations, that he had to create a paper trail, an unclassified one.
To protect himself, to protect the FBI.
Both, probably. He testified he wrote the memo about the Flynn conversation immediately after leaving the meeting, like in the FBI car outside Trump Tower.
Wow.
Yeah. It shows he was already operating on the assumption that the political environment was potentially compromised, even at the very top. Documenting everything was his way to try and shield the Bureau and himself from pressure. Those memos are now central to his defense against the retribution claims. He was recording potential interference in real time.
Okay, so that sets the stage for the feud. But to really get why Comey became such a target, why he was fired, why he's now indicted, we have to look at 2016, specifically his handling of the Hillary Clinton email investigation, the mid-year exam.
Right, because the DOJ Inspector General reports on that investigation revealed some serious policy failures.
Yeah.
These damaged the FBI's credibility before Trump even took office.
And this is where that Comey doctrine really kicks into high gear, isn't it? Starting with that July 5th, 2016 press conference.
Exactly. By May 2016, Comey and his team knew they weren't going to recommend prosecuting Clinton.
Why not? This is a key point, legally.
It boiled down to criminal intent. The law they were looking at, Section 793(3)(I), requires showing someone acted willfully or with gross negligence that was almost willful. Basically, did they knowingly put classified info where it shouldn't be?
And the FBI couldn't prove that.
They concluded they didn't have enough evidence to show that state of mind. They believed no reasonable prosecutor would bring the case. So legally, the decision was clear. No charges.
Okay, so no charges. But Comey didn't just let the DOJ announce that quietly. He decided to make his own statement.
And here's the solo action part. He deliberately didn't tell Attorney General Loretta Lynch or Deputy AG Sally Yates his plan beforehand.
Why not?
He told the OIG later he was afraid they'd tell him not to do it because it broke all the norms about commenting publicly, especially so close to an election. He only told them that morning, July 5th, after the press was already called.
He went rogue, essentially, bypassed his bosses, and his justification was tied to that tarmac meeting.
The Lynch-Tarmac incident, yeah. That meeting between A.G. Lynch and Bill Clinton on the tarmac in Phoenix. Comey said that's what tipped the scales for him.
Even though they said they just talked about grandkids and golf.
Right. But Comey felt it created this corrosive doubt about the investigation's integrity. Especially since Lynch was a Democratic appointee, he thought the public wouldn't trust the DOJ's decision. The OIG later did call Lynch's failure to end that meeting an error in judgment, by the way.
So Comey decided the only way to look credible was to cut the DOJ out and announce it himself.
Pretty much. But then there's the language he used in that announcement. That caused a whole separate firestorm.
The grossly negligent versus extremely careless thing.
Exactly. The initial draft used the phrase grossly negligent to describe Clinton's handling of emails. That phrase is close to the legal standard in the statute.
They changed it.
They changed it to extremely careless. Comey said his team advised the change because grossly negligent sounded too much like the criminal standard they had decided not to pursue. Extremely careless let him criticize her strongly without implying criminality.
So it was a legalistic distinction, trying to be precise.
Legally precise, yes, but politically. It looked like he was softening the blow, maybe protecting her. It just created more suspicion, even though he was trying to be transparent and legally accurate.
That seems to be the recurring theme, doesn't it? Trying to navigate politics with legal tools and ending up pleasing no one.
It really is. And then he did something similar, arguably even more explosive, just days before the election. October 28th, 2016, the letter to Congress.
Triggered by the Anthony Weiner laptop discovery. Weiner, the husband of Clinton aide Huma Abedin. What do they find there?
A massive number of emails.
Yeah.
Over 300,000. Many involved Abedin and Clinton, potentially some from early in her time as Secretary of State. It was clearly relevant to the email investigation they'd already closed.
And Comey felt he had to tell Congress, despite the DOJ rule against impacting elections.
He framed it as an ethical obligation. He testified the investigation was closed. Now there was new potential evidence. He felt keeping silent would be misleading Congress and the public. So he prioritized updating the record over the election neutrality policy.
But his own leadership at DOJ strongly disagreed.
Very strongly. Deputy AG Yates, others, warned him not to send the letter. They cited the long-standing practice, the risk of influencing the vote just days away.
And Comey's reaction?
He basically saw their opposition as just a recommendation, not a direct order. He later told the OIG he felt they were being cowardly by not giving him a clear yes or no, leaving him to take the heat alone.
So what did the Inspector General ultimately conclude about Comey's motives in both July and October? This seems key.
It is. The OIG concluded his decisions weren't based on department policy, but on ad hoc decision-making based on his personal views.
Making it up as he went along, essentially.
Kind of. And here's the really political part of the OIG's finding. They suggested his October decision, the letter, was probably influenced by a tacit assumption that Hillary Clinton was sure to be the next president.
Wait, really? He thought she'd win, so he sent the letter. How does that make sense?
The thinking, according to the OIG, was that he needed to protect the FBI's credibility with the incoming Clinton administration. If the Wiener laptop stuff came out after she won, and it looked like the FBI hid it, that would be catastrophic for the Bureau. So he acted to preempt that criticism, prioritizing the FBI's future reputation over election neutrality.
Wow. So he acted unconventionally to protect the FBI from future political attacks, but in doing so, created this massive current political firestorm and arguably influenced the election he thought was already decided.
That's the irony, isn't it? His attempt to manage political perception backfired spectacularly.
Okay, this is where things get really murky. Comey broke the rules, acted based on his own judgment, partly because he seemed to distrust the political leadership and maybe even his own institution's ability to handle things. But was the institution itself already deeply flawed?
That's the critical context. Because the internal problems at the FBI at the time gave so much ammunition to those later claims about a deep state conspiracy. Claims that absolutely feed into the political climate surrounding this 2025 indictment.
All right, listen, everyone. This is a really important point where policy failure and political attacks start to blur. The core info is now in your hands. Before we connect these dots, please pause this deep dive right now. Share your feelings about this case immediately in the comments. Thank you, the knowledgeable viewer of KaiZen. We really value your input. Okay, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, we have to talk about the internal environment. The Strzok-Page scandal is probably the biggest example.
Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, key FBI officials on both the Clinton email and the Russia investigations. Their text messages, they were pretty bad.
They were, frankly, terrible from a professional standpoint. Thousands of texts showing extreme bias against Trump. Strzok texting Page saying, "We'll stop him," referring to Trump, calling him an idiot. I mean, these aren't low-level agents. These are senior people running incredibly sensitive investigations.
So how did the OIG judge the impact of those texts? Did they find the bias actually change the outcomes of the investigations?
This is crucial. The OIG said the text showed extremely poor judgment and gross lack of professionalism. They cast a huge cloud over the FBI's credibility. However, and this is the key distinction, the OIG found no evidence that this bias directly changed specific investigative decisions in the mid-year case, like the decision not to prosecute Clinton in July 2016.
So the final legal call was sound, based on evidence, not bias.
According to the OIG, yes. The lack of evidence for criminal intent was the driver. But the perception bias was overwhelming, and other policy failures didn't help.
Like using personal email.
Yeah. The OIG confirmed Comey himself, plus Strzok and Page, used personal email, Gmail, Yahoo for some unclassified FBI business. That's a policy violation, plain and simple. It adds to that picture of rules not being followed, even at the top.
Which brings us back to that Wiener laptop, the delay in acting on it. You mentioned Strzok was involved there too.
Yes, and this delay really highlights a massive internal breakdown. Remember the timeline. The FBI knew about these 300,000-plus emails, including Clinton-related ones, by September 29, 2016.
But they did nothing for almost a month, until late October.
Nothing significant, not until the prosecutors in New York pushed them on October 21st. Nearly 3 weeks of inaction on potentially vital evidence right before the election.
Why the delay? What was Strzok's explanation?
Strzok said his focus had shifted entirely to the new Russia investigation. He figured the emails probably wouldn't change the Clinton outcome anyway, but given his anti-Trump texts,
The OIG didn't buy it.
they said they did not have confidence that his decision to basically shelve the Wiener laptop review while prioritizing the Russia probe was free from bias. It suggests bias might not have changed the final Clinton decision, but it sure looks like it affected the timing and urgency of investigating new evidence related to her.
And Comey himself seemed kind of out of the loop on this.
He testified he only vaguely remembered hearing about the laptop in early October. Said the information didn't index with him, partly because maybe he didn't realize Weiner was married to Huma Abedin. It points to a real disconnect, an institutional failure to recognize and act on critical information promptly.
So the FBI wasn't exactly a well-oiled, impartial machine when Comey sent that October letter.
Far from it. And other issues fueled the perception of conflicts of interest, too.
Like the McCabe situation, Andrew McCabe, the deputy director.
Right. His wife, Jill McCabe, ran for Virginia State Senate. She received over $675,000 in campaign funds from entities linked to Terry McAuliffe, a major Clinton ally. That was like 40% of her total funding.
The optics are just awful, even if McCabe followed ethics rules initially.
The appearance was terrible. Comey eventually had McCabe recuse himself from Clinton matters in November 2016, after the election and after the story became public, citing those appearance issues. But the damage was done. It fed directly into that swamp narrative.
And there was another official, Peter KaiZen.
Assistant AG Peter KaiZen, he got recused from Clinton matters too. He sent John Podesta, Clinton's campaign chair, a heads-up email about the timing of an FOIA release related to Clinton.
Was the information itself secret?
No, it was publicly available info. But the act of giving a heads-up to the campaign chair, especially when his son was apparently looking for a job with the campaign, leadership felt it showed poor judgment regarding appearances.
So you have bias, personal emails, delayed investigations, appearance issues, and then there were leaks.
A huge problem, according to the OIG. They found a pervasive culture of unauthorized media contacts at the FBI, people leaking info constantly, plus a real fear of leaks paralyzing decision-making.
So the policy was clear, don't leak, but the culture was broken.
Completely broken. And that broken culture, that fear of leaks, was apparently part of Comey's calculation in October. He felt he had to get ahead of the story, announce the Weiner laptop discovery himself, because he feared someone else would leak it in a worse way.
So Comey's goal might have been transparency or protecting the institution, but the institution itself was already struggling with bias, conflicts, and leaks. It was compromised from within.
That's the inescapable conclusion. The rot, or at least the appearance of it, was already there. That context is vital for understanding everything that followed, including the indictment. Okay, this is where we pull it all together. For you, the knowledgeable learner, the absolute key skill here is being able to separate three things that constantly get mashed together in the political spin cycle: policy violations, poor judgment, and actual criminal intent.
They're not the same thing, are they? But they often get treated like they are.
Not at all the same. Let's apply this to the 2016 Meteor investigation first. Policy versus criminal intent.
What did the OIG find?
Okay, the OIG found zero evidence that political bias directly changed the main investigative decision, the decision not to prosecute Clinton in July 2016. Prosecutors stuck to the legal standard. Not enough proof of criminal intent. Legally, that core decision holds up.
Yeah.
But the OIG found tons of evidence of poor judgment and policy violations. Comey's solo press conferences using personal email, the huge delay on the Weiner laptop, the Strzok-Page texts. These are serious failures. They demand accountability, maybe administrative action, maybe institutional reform. But they aren't necessarily crimes.
That's a critical distinction. Failing at your job or breaking internal rules isn't the same as committing a felony.
Exactly. Now, let's use that same lens on the current 2025 indictment against Comey.
What's the allegation there?
The indictment alleged specific criminal acts: lying to Congress, obstruction related to leaks. This is an accusation of criminal malice, of deliberate dishonesty under oath. That's a different category than the 2016 policy failures.
Okay, so legally, it's about proving that specific lie. But the context matters hugely here, right? The learner's tool, as you said.
Yeah. Absolutely. You have to ask, who brought this charge and when? We know former President Trump publicly called for Comey's prosecution for years. Then his former personal lawyer, Pam Bondi, gets put in charge of that specific office shortly before the indictment comes down.
So the timing and the personnel involved raise massive red flags about political motivation.
Undeniably, it means you have a specific legal charge, lying to Congress, but the whole situation surrounding it screams political pressure. So the fair question is this indictment focused on proving a genuine specific crime? Or is it basically using a potential lie as a pretext to punish Comey for all the political sins attributed to him from 2016.
If prosecutors can prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Comey knowingly lied in that 2020 testimony about leaks, then legally the charge could stand, regardless of the politics.
Legally, yes. A provable lie under oath is a crime. But the political context strongly suggests the motivation for digging deep to find and charge that specific crime might have been political retribution. It's incredibly hard to untangle.
This brings us back to that policy versus politics test. Comey himself admitted he acted outside the normal course in 2016.
Right. He said he feared the DOJ would screw around with the Clinton decision, that the world will catch on fire if he wouldn't step in. He saw himself as acting decisively to prevent chaos.
But the OIG saw that Comey doctrine as incredibly dangerous.
Very dangerous. They warned it creates a situation where everything becomes ad hoc, based on one person's gut feeling about politics instead of relying on established rules and processes. By trying to be politically savvy and independent, Comey ended up becoming maybe the most politicized FBI director ever.
It's like a tragedy, in a way. The institution, with its leaks and biases, was failing him. And then he failed the institution by going rogue, trusting his own judgment over the rules.
The whole system seemed to break down at the same time. Both the established procedures and the individual leadership buckled under the intense political pressure. That's the real takeaway from 2016.
So what we've uncovered here is incredibly complex. It's not a simple story. You've got clear policy failures, undeniable internal bias that damaged the FBI's reputation, all happening in this hyper-partisan environment that led Comey to believe breaking the rules was the only way to save the institution.
It's not about finding a simple hero or villain. It's about understanding that systemic breakdown. And for you, listening, the crucial skill is separating those layers. The policy mistakes, the bad judgment, the potential criminal act alleged now, and filtering out the political noise surrounding it all.
The FBI definitely earned the criticism it got in the OIG reports for those 2016 failures. But the question now is whether the political system is trying to turn those past errors, or maybe a specific later misstatement, into a criminal conviction driven by retribution.
That's the core tension.
Okay, you've heard the deep dive. You have the context, the details. We want your final verdict. Based on everything, if you believe Comey is essentially innocent of criminal wrongdoing and this indictment is mainly a political attack, tell us. Write Free E.
But if you believe he crossed lines, either with his actions in 2016 or potentially in his 2020 testimony, and that accountability, even criminal accountability, is warranted, then write LOCK. Let's see the final vote in the comments.
Let us know what you think.
And here's a final thought to leave you with. The OIG emphasized over and over how vital open and candid communication is between leaders at the DOJ and FBI.
But that completely broke down in 2016.
Utterly. Comey has plans from the Attorney General. Later, the AG and Deputy AG were apparently afraid to even talk directly to Comey because they thought he'd just push back hard.
When the Attorney General and the FBI director can't even have an honest, direct conversation about a major national security investigation because of political tension?
What hope does the justice system have for real independence? When that fundamental trust at the very top collapses, the entire foundation of impartial law enforcement starts to crumble. That, perhaps, is the most damaging legacy of the whole Comey affair.